Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We fear the turtles, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the shell and tell. They come with all the facts. It's the shell and tell.
Terps fans, welcome back to yet another episode of the Shell and Tell podcast. It's Thursday, September 29th, and we are back from our trip to Michigan, which was a hell of a time. We're going to talk a lot about that as the fellas played their asses off in Ann Arbor, man, but come up short versus number 4 Michigan. So we break down what went right and what went wrong during the game.
Yeah, the team's very adamant there are no moral victories. For players, fans, please take the moral victories. But we're on to MSU, so we discussed the upcoming matchup versus Spartans at new SECU Field this weekend.
Yep, and we're going to talk about who to watch for and what to watch for this weekend as Maryland looks to get to 4-1 and back to 500 in conference play.
All right, before we start this week's show, today's episode is sponsored by Quick Stretch Bodyworks. Quick Stretch Bodyworks helps athletes in their performance and recovery periods, both during and in the off seasons. The naturally formulated athletic performance and recovery lotion is an easy, effective way for athletes to prepare for skill training and workouts in full swing. Founded by Todd Smith, a former college athlete and head athletic trainer at 2 collegiate programs himself, and then even some of the athletes at University of Maryland are taking advantage of this product, including star linebacker Ruben Hippolyte II, which hopefully he rubbed a little bit extra on this week. Make sure you head over to quickstretchbodyworks.com and check it out today. That's quickstretchbodyworks.com.
Well, as I said, man, we're back from our trip to Michigan, which we didn't get a chance to record while we were there like we did up in Minnesota. I guess we could have. We just
carried all the recording equipment a bit there.
We did. It made the trip with us, but we didn't end up making the recording. But a lot of fun. Had a great time. And look, the bar is set really high, man. Between Minnesota and Michigan, I don't know how these other schools and campuses are going to compete.
Yeah, you guys have a favorite between the two?
Oh man, that's pulling at straws. That's tough.
It's still got to be Minnesota, but they are in the same tier. It just all the strange things that happened that trip, the things that aligned and the things we did that just were kind of one-off accidents, keeps that an edge ahead. But both are very cool. And Ann Arbor was a very, very interesting city. It just didn't quite have all the surprises and things around the corner.
When you think of Michigan, right? Again, this is somebody who's never been to Michigan. The only thing I know of in Michigan is Detroit and the lakes.
That's we fly into Detroit.
Yeah,
right?
But you're in Detroit for a total of 10 minutes before you get in an Uber and you're gone, right? So my mind thinks of Detroit, which I think of as a very parallel to Baltimore, and Ann Arbor is none of the above. Ann Arbor is very much a small town, very nice, clean, uppity town.
Utopian
very quiet.
Bubble, Stepford Wives.
Yeah. So it was interesting.
It was completely a ghost town 12 hours before the game.
Literally.
There was no one in the town of Ann Arbor.
In your mind.
100,000 people show up.
Yeah. In your mind, the entire time you're like, there's going to be 115,000 people in this stadium in less than 12 hours. How do we not see hundreds and thousands of people just at least walking around or partying or pregame or whatever? But nothing the day before.
Nowhere to be found.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. It kind of makes you wonder where everyone's coming from. I know a lot of Michigan fans didn't necessarily go to Michigan itself, but still, I don't know that I'd expect it to be that empty.
Yeah.
Well, what we found is that the hotels are jam-packed with Michigan residents. They're not the away team filling the hotels. Like, it was every room was sold, and the prices are insane, especially the Airbnb price. I think they start at like $2,000 a night.
Yeah.
But it's all Michigan. It's all locals that just live a little too far to drive to the game.
Well, to that point, it was also Parent Appreciation Week, so there were a lot of parents family weekend coming in out of town, so there was a lot of that too. But we were definitely the only Maryland fans that we saw at our hotel.
Yeah,
people also were saying that, like, hey, look, there's a Maryland fan. Like, it was the first one they had seen on, like, all day.
and you taught them what a Terpin was, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Any good food or bar spots?
Yeah, actually, man, the first place that we went to was one of the places that was like kind of high up on was a campus seats, and I actually talked to two different Uber drivers, and both Uber drivers talked about it. It's this place called Frida Batidos. It's like a burger shake type place, but it's all in like a Spanish Cuban style restaurant. So it kind of had almost like a Chipotle vibe to it, but with alcohol involved too. It was kind of it was kind of unique. But the food was great. At least that place, the food was very good.
Yeah, the food was really good. They had the really interesting shakes and desserts and stuff. The one complaint we had was they had like what was the kale? Got like a mango pineapple or something. It had cayenne pepper in it.
Yeah, no warning.
No description of cayenne pepper being in this sweet drink that they're selling. But it was just like drinking straight fire.
Right.
Yeah, something like that definitely needs a disclaimer.
Exactly.
Yeah, on the menu, please.
Exactly what I said. There was another place called Pretzel Bell that everybody spoke highly of. The vibe there was kind of cool, but terrible food. The pretzel crusted mac and cheese was god awful that we got there. The barbecue
noodles with some croutons on it.
They did have this Michigan style pizza, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like Chicago pizza, that's
Detroit style pizza,
or Detroit style pizza, which I didn't really know what to expect. It was good, but again, surprise jalapenos on a barbecue chicken pizza that I wasn't expecting.
They're really trying to spice up their life around there. I was a fan though. I did like that spicy pizza.
The theme of the trip was definitely Tums and heartburn because everything was extra spicy. It was crazy. I guess what was the other place we went to, Ryan? Regents Field. That was pretty cool.
Regents Field was where we spent most of the time. I think it was a 6-hour dinner, which was also a theme of the trip. Is that everywhere was a long wait for everything, and no one seemed to care. Everyone was still very happy to be alive, and it's a very pleasant town where you can be told it's an hour and 30-minute wait till you can get a dinner, and you'll all sit pleasantly having conversations on a sidewalk in the rain, and apparently just normal. That's how people are.
Now we went there after the game, right? So we're there and we're waiting for a table, and they put us at this like table that had 2 seats right outside of the bar.
It looked like they were storing tables there. It didn't look like people should sit there.
Right. We're literally
underneath the TV,
underneath the awning, right up against the window. But what was kind of cool about it was right there in the window is a sign that says "Podcasters Welcome." They had no idea we were podcasters or whatever. So it was like destiny in our head.
Literally framing this "Podcasters Welcome" window.
It was kind of neat. They put us there. We had a long ass wait, which gave plenty of opportunity for Michigan fans to walk up to us and make comments about the hats because we had the big hats.
We're still in the Noggin Boss hats from the game.
Oh my god!
Noggin Boss got hella free advertising.
Yes, they did.
They have more than been paid for these hats they got us.
100%. Need to put me on payroll at this point.
Yeah, we were sidewalk front, and every like 4th person would wander up and be like, "Those are cool hats. Where'd you get them?" And like have like a 3-minute conversation about the hats. Fred had it down to a science, his sales spiel by like person 5.
And I got to give a big shout out, man, to the fans. We had a lot of obviously Michigan fans talk to us. Everybody was so welcoming. Everybody was so nice. But at Regents specifically, we had a lady come out. Well, first of all, we were having this weird text conversation with this group through the window. She put her phone up the window and she's like, "What's your hats about?" We're like, "Shell and Tell, it's a podcast." Going back and forth. She's like, "Who are Fred and Ryan?" We're like, "We're Fred and Ryan," right? So we're having this conversation.
Holding QR codes up to the window. She's scanning it through the window.
It was really funny. So we have this conversation with this girl, and she was a younger girl, college girl. And later on, this older lady walks out, really nice lady. She walks up to us. She's like, "I just want to let you know that I covered your tab, and I want you to guys talk about on your show that
awesome.
that not all Michigan fans are assholes." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I haven't seen one asshole yet."
Yes. Where are you hiding your assholes? We've been looking for them all day.
Trying to hunt them down. Can't find a single one. But really cool. Like I said, we had a great time, and all the fans there, man, they were just super welcoming and very hospitable.
That's really cool. Yeah, stuff like that. It's kind of always the cherry on top for vacation or weekend away, things like that. So that's pretty cool.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just kind of seeing, I guess, kind of that and just campus not as populated, I guess, as maybe even I expected. But come game day, how did that tailgate team kind of look out?
It's funny you asked that because on Friday, like we talked about, we walked around campus and we walked around the stadium, and it was pretty much a ghost town. But when we got over by the stadium, one of the things that jumped out to us right away is right across the street, there's a high school, and it must be a huge high school because the parking lot was huge. The front yard of it was huge. And that's where Fox Big Noon's tailgate setup was.
Oh, cool.
So all that stuff was over there with nobody monitoring it, nobody watching it. So you could literally walk right up to all the equipment, take pictures.
And we did in the dark.
100%. So we're doing that, and the bands over the high school bands over there practicing. But one of the things that jumped out to us is this place is just lined, I mean, with hundreds and hundreds of trash cans, literally freaking everywhere. We're like, all right, this must be the big tailgate scene, right? So we're walking around the lot, and we go over to the side, and right across the street from the stadium is the university golf course.
Yeah.
We look out on the university golf course, and it's lined with hundreds and hundreds of trash cans. And I'm thinking around like, if this was in Maryland, there's no chance that they could have a tailgate on a golf course, because Maryland people would just completely trash it. There's no way that they're gonna have to have regulations. There's no way that there's gonna be a tailgate scene. I had an argument with Ryan. I'm like, there's no way possible. Like they're gonna ruin the fairways. This golf course is gonna be absolutely destroyed.
Fred's a golfer, so Fred's just thinking about how bad the golf's gonna be the next day. And I'm like, no, bro, they're definitely doing that. And shout out to Matt Dewhurst, Dewey. He had told us, he said, when we went up there, we tailgated on the golf course. And I just thought he meant like we played a round of golf and drank a lot of beer before the football
in the
game.
parking lot or something.
Like that's how I understood we tailgated at the golf course, because like we talked about even doing that at Maryland, playing the University of Maryland golf course before a 7:00 game, and then like moving over to the tailgate and then playing or whatever. So that's how I interpret it. No, they tailgate on the golf course. You drive over, you park on the rough, you party on the fairways. Like the only thing they don't let you do is go on the greens and the sand traps.
But
that's it.
It's marked off with the cheesiest of like wire, so you could literally just walk on it if you wanted to. There's nothing holding you back from it.
And people have great setups over there.
Oh,
really
yeah.
great setups.
Super intense. But again, when we left the stadium, we walked by it. There's no trash everywhere. Everybody was really respectful. Everybody threw their stuff away, cleaned up after themselves.
It burn out on the golf course.
It was pretty impressive. But then on game day, so we walked through the golf course just to kind of experience it all and talk to some fans and all. Thought we would get some trash talking there, but really no trash talking at all.
Every once in a while, but
you might get one
bad.
person that booed at you, but that was about it. Like that was the severity of it. There was somebody who hung like a Terp.
Hung a Testudo. Yeah. He had all the people lynched. He had all the people they'd already beat lynched on this like high thing. And Testudo was the last one that'd been lynched up. I had to take a photo of it. It's blasphemous, sure, but I was kind of impressed with that kind of dedication.
It was. It was a really cool setup.
That is pretty cool.
A lot of really cool, intense buses. One was an ambulance. It was all decked out. It got a lot of tailgating ideas for the future. A lot of plans for future additions to our tailgate. But then we walked over to the college, again, noon kickoff thing, and that was really cool. We got to sit there and experience it. I don't know if you got a chance to see it prior to the game, but we were there front and center in the back behind Reggie Bush, literally straight in the back. They gave me a Maryland flag. I'm the asshole waving the Maryland flag in the back. Ryan's got his hat up in the air.
If you watch the 11 a.m. version, Fred is all over it, and I'm intermittently through it.
Damn. I missed that. No, that's pretty cool. You got big time now.
Yeah. It was pretty cool, though. I mean, again, we weren't there for super long, but either way.
Yeah, we walked.
Go ahead.
We walked up to it to be there a little earlier, and we got pulled off immediately. Some Michigan fan taps on the shoulder and goes, "Are you guys Maryland fans?" Like it wasn't obvious enough in like giant hats, giant jerseys, everything. I guess he thought because there's so few Maryland fans that we could have been like Fox plants to just look like we're fans in the audience.
Right.
And we're like, yeah. He's like, will you play beer pong with us? So we go over and play beer pong and at his tailgate. He's giving us beer and everything. So everybody was really welcoming. It was a lot of fun. I can't really say much about it.
No, it was great.
True. That's a great experience. And then obviously kind of leading up to it, just with the big house kind of being, that historic venue, did it kind of match expectations?
It did. It was a little different because I guess when you think of 110 to 120,000 people being in a stadium, right? I kind of try to equate that to something that I know, and I know what 70 some thousand fans look like and sound like at M&T Bank, because I'm a season ticket holder there, right? And I've been there through many a sellouts. Well, the difference is that's a stackable stadium at M&T. You know, it's got a lower deck, it's got a middle deck, and it's got an upper deck, right? So the fans are right over top of the action. This is 120,000 fans that are dispersed out in just one lower bowl. So it didn't quite have the sound impact that I would have thought that 110 plus thousand people would have. But nonetheless, man, it's still impressive to see that many people. And we were, 7 rows off the field. So 99% of the stadium was behind us. And when you turned around to look at it, it was super impressive.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It was kind of interesting too, because they have like this weird like moat around the stadium where you get into the stadium before you're in the stadium. So you're checked into the tickets, and then it's just like ground. It's just land with like its own like little eateries on the outside, and everyone's just kind of wandering around. So you can't really tell who's here and who's not, because now you're in like the size of a racetrack or something like area. So you can't tell that there's 100,000 people there.
Yeah.
And then when the game starts like getting kicked off for like 5 minutes beforehand, and I'm going, this place is kind of empty, and it was a little rainy, it was noon. I'm like, are we gonna be disappointed? Is this not gonna like fill up? And they all just appeared like at the same time, like clockwork. Just fill their seats. There was no like going to get food or anything. Like, you're stacked in there. Our seats didn't even have a walkway to them, because like the bottom like 12 rows, you had to like go past people's seats in order to like get to the side area. So that was really interesting. So we just kind of wiggled in. There was not a lot of space at all. Us two big guys were cramping the hell out of my wife in the middle, and it still did not help. They have the same bleacher seats we do, and I think the numbers are even closer together.
We had a Nazi like keeping us in line with how much we stood and cheered. God, that was awful. You couldn't stand up and cheer without one of the ushers yelling at you to sit down, because
everyone has the right to see the game. Not everyone can stand. And I'm just like, but I paid $1,200 to sit here. Like, I can't get excited my team scores. Like, what are you doing? And it wasn't just us. He was telling all the Michigan people to sit down too. It wasn't like, well, fuck the Maryland guy.
But the section,
I understand that,
right over from
one
us,
section away that wasn't his,
stood for pretty much the entire game. Like, they didn't say one word to them at all. It was unreal. But it was really cool, because like we talked about with Charlotte, I thought one of the things that was kind of unique about Charlotte was how close you were to the players. And I didn't think we'd experience that at a Big Ten facility, but our seats were literally right next to the tunnel where the players come out. So we got a chance to see them all run out of the tunnel. We got the chance to see the band come out, which that's another thing, man. My father was part of a marching band in Ohio. So Ohio, Michigan, marching bands are huge out that way. And you see it on TV, and it's impressive. And I think what they bring to Maryland is a portion of the actual marching band. But when you see it in person there, it is unreal. It is unreal.
It fills the entire field the whole time.
Yeah. The sound is amazing. I mean, they had the normal marching band there, and then they also had like it was like a throwback marching band. It was because of homecoming. Because of the homecoming thing. But that was another really cool thing that I didn't kind of expect. But I would say, like, from overall game experience, the only thing that I would say Maryland has up on Michigan right now would be that giant, beautiful new video board out there that we just put up, because the two video boards they had there were just kind of meh. And the sound system was bad. Terrible.
It was bad.
Yeah. It was not enough to fill that area at all. So the sound at Maryland is a million times better already, even though people are still complaining about getting that fine tuned. It will eventually be fine.
Sounds like Michigan's hurting for money to be able to upgrade things like that.
Yeah,
and speakers aren't that expensive. I don't know why they couldn't just.
Surprising.
There was only
pretty sure I heard a couple of louder tailgates than I heard inside that stadium.
There were two scoreboards, one in each end zone, and only one of them even had sound. So there was no stereo to it. It was my right ear was getting all the noise.
Yeah.
And there was
it felt like your left ear was clogged the entire game because you never heard anything coming into it. It's all coming out from the right side. They did. Now we have SVP as our
which
voice.
I thought was a good flex. Which
and it is.
I love you, SVP.
Love SVP.
It's a flex.
But hands down to Michigan, they had James Earl Jones. Mr. Darth Vader himself is the voice there that they have. So pretty freaking cool to have James Earl Jones as your like amp up hype video guy that's building up to the game. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
But all right, let's talk about the game, man. I mean, we like the experience was great. And to be honest with you, you know, I wasn't very confident going into this game. I know Ahmed, you didn't do the show with it. It was Ryan and I, but Ryan was a lot more confident going into this game than I was. And I'll be honest with you, I'm really proud of the boys. They lose 34-27, a 1-possession games. Now 3-1 on the season, but man, it was fun to be there. And they were in it literally until the last minute.
Yeah, they definitely were. To win 59 minutes and 52 seconds, or not win, but tie 59 minutes and 52 seconds of that game was a lot of fun. And you also just felt the fear of the Michigan fans being there live, that they believed that Maryland was going to beat them. And, you know, that was enough excitement for me today. I wish we would have taken care of it, but just to feel that ridiculous confidence of people with that, the few that did talk trash, like, hey, how much are you going to lose by today? And the few things that were said like beforehand, because they didn't take Maryland seriously. They thought we were going to be another high school that they played this year, but that all disappeared pretty quick and you felt it.
Yeah, I actually had a cousin that was out of town and he was watching the game. He's from Canada, so, you know, college football, whatnot, is not something that he was kind of growing up with. So he was watching with me, and he kind of said midway through the second quarter, he was like, it's kind of Maryland's a better team, right? Like Maryland's ranked, right? And I was like, no, Maryland's not ranked. And I had to tell him, I was like, no, Michigan's number 4 in the country. Maryland's not ranked. They're like, yeah, no, you guys look really good. And I was like, yeah, no, this looks really good. And I think, you know, his sentiments echo your guys' sentiments, echo, you know, I think what was kind of the national narrative after that game was that Maryland, you know, they gave that Michigan team a fight really for 60 minutes. I mean, even after the kickoff, the fumble on the opening kickoff, Michigan took the early lead, and, you know, in years past, you just kind of watch that and you're like, yep, that's the beginning of the snowball effect. And, you know, it really wasn't that. Maryland was really, you know, it stinks that the loss ended up coming down to, you know, a couple miscues here and there, but yeah, I mean, you can't knock the effort, the competitiveness, the ability to have a close game against a Big Ten power like that. I mean, that's just huge for the next step for the program.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, getting in, the moral victory is allowed to be had by the fans.
Absolutely.
You can appreciate this, guys. Like, I know it doesn't mean anything yet because we do have to take care of business next week, or it's just a moral victory and that does nothing for you. But this is something that can be built on if it's done right, and it feels completely different than the blowouts we've been experiencing. So appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest building block and the biggest improvement from one week to the next in this game specifically had to been the fact that this is probably the most disciplined game by the players and well-coached game of the season by a long shot, in my opinion. 1 penalty all game, and it came with 2 minutes left in the game. It was a false start penalty when you had a week prior against SMU had 15 penalties. You shot yourself in the foot time after time after time, and we harped on it on last week's show that, like, there needs to be accountability. You need to hold these guys accountable, lay the law down, punish your guys per se. And even Loxley made a comment in his post-game press conference that, you know, one of the keys to this team being more disciplined was that he punished his guys. And it's good to see that because whatever he did, it worked. And that was, I think, one of the big deciding factors as to why Maryland was in this game for so long.
And one of the big things about that is what we talked about a couple years ago when Loxley first took over, is that they weren't allowed to have any negative, like, thought process or looks or, like, run these kids or do anything because everyone was so worried about the shadow of the Jordan McNair incident.
Right.
So to see that, like, Lox has now built the trust and rapport to say that what he said was, I punished my boys for not doing what I raised them to do. Like, so that you can have a negative impact and it still be this, like, supportive family nature, and to show that you can do that. And you have to do that in football. We've talked about before. It can't be all sunshine and roses. You're not going to get anything done that way. So, but we did see huge differences. What was one of the biggest celebrations me and Fred had was Deshaun Jones' first catch, where he caught the ball, he went to the ground, he immediately stood up, jogged to the official, handed him the ball, and jogged off the field without looking at anyone.
Hooray!
He didn't make eye contact. He didn't talk to anybody. Nope. He did nothing.
Did
he went
exactly
directly
what he's
to the
supposed
bench.
to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be some type of record to go from 15 penalties to 1 penalty.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
that
like,
swing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many teams have been able to do something like that. I mean, I think that's just kind of wild. But yeah, I mean, like you guys said, and then obviously the ability to generate turnovers. Obviously, Maryland lost a turnover battle, but to do it for a second consecutive game after not being able to do so against Buffalo or Charlotte, which was kind of concerning to me. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that the signs of growth are there. And obviously, fans, to really move the needle, you're gonna have to pull off one of these wins. But I just think that this was probably the next best thing, really. So we'll see. Definitely no shortage of opponents and chances through the season. So, but definitely a impressive result in first crack.
And clearly the penalties weren't all the Terps. Like there were definitely some calls that had been made the last couple weeks
That weren't.
in the like pass interference realm, or just like legal hands, things like that have been ticky-tack calls the last couple weeks. They were not called in either direction in this. I watched back the game today. Actually, there was a clear pass interference on both Demas and Rakim on our side, and there were probably 2 or 3 that would have been called in recent weeks that we got away with on that. So I can't say it was the cleanest game ever, but those are those competitive type penalties that Locke said. The bonehead ones were gone. There was one false start late in the game. That's something you got to clean out. But other than that, all those personal fouls, the 12 men on the field, all the dumb stuff was gone, and you can't argue.
All the ones you can't argue, the ones that are going to get a flag every time they happen because there's no gray area in between it. A personal foul is a personal foul, and jumping off sides is jumping off sides.
And I know the fans have been really repping these refs, and yeah, the interceptions might be an issue we're going to dig into on the refs a little bit, but it was a fairly called game. It was they pocketed that flag on both sides of that of the refereeing window there.
Yeah, I don't understand that. But the interceptions, how does that not come into review? And it's funny. I actually had a coach that reached out to me, a coach in the Big Ten that reached out to me about that. And he was just like, listen, like Big Ten, I mean, it's just openly talked about amongst the coaches. If you're Michigan, if you're in Ohio State, if you're at Penn State, you're going to get that call. If that was Maryland on the other end, everyone knows that Michigan would get that review. They would command that type of respect. So I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I think fans kind of always say stuff like that. So I thought it was really interesting that, former coach in the conference, was pretty transparent about that. But I mean, the first one wasn't even close, and I just don't.
The first one wasn't close. The second one would have stood whichever way they said it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I think if they called it incomplete, it would have stayed incomplete. If they called it a catch, they would have stayed a catch. But the first one, I agree. That hand just flopping around as the ball touches the ground. Just because one hand doesn't move doesn't mean it's a catch.
On top of that, right, and I haven't had a chance to see it yet, so being that you watched the game today, there was also the one that we had or might have had that was in the end zone there where his feet actually inbounds. Did he get 1 foot down?
I don't know that I got to that player.
Okay.
I might have missed it. But yeah, I did think that was also in play.
At least
watch
to be
it
looked
live.
at.
The interception in the end zone that they called us out of bounds.
I think it was. I think his first foot was just out.
Okay. Because from our seats, he hit the pylon. So I was like, unless his second foot, I guess, probably hit the pylon. The first was out of bounds, I guess.
And credit to Michigan's, AV department, because they didn't do any replays on the big boards there. They're not going to show you anything that's questionable there. But so we didn't get a chance to see it. But live in person, it looked like it was at least reviewable. So there were 3 questionable calls on there.
I mean, even the commentators were saying that's not an interception. Yeah, they should be reviewing that. And it just felt like everyone that saw the play just so I was really not. I don't want to say surprised that it happened, but and I don't want to say that's the reason why Maryland lost. But if you overturn that, it definitely could have been a different game. So we'll see. But
it changes everything, because it changes Talia's thought process too. Like he hasn't thrown an interception. He's not going to be in his head about being the one that threw it. It even though we stopped them after an interception and they didn't score any points, that doesn't mean it doesn't change the full dynamics of it.
I mean, they were approaching the red zone, so it was they were right there. So, but again, it's too much to say that that's the reason they lost. Anything like that, I just
there could be 50 other reasons we could talk about.
Well, yeah, and there's other reasons too. Obviously, Blake Corum was a big part of that. Guy ran for over 200 yards against us, and we saw just how much of an impact not having a Ruben Hippolyte out there in the middle of your defense makes to be able to get around the edge and stop these long touchdown runs. And It was, throughout the game, there were multiple times where Caleb Wheatland went down for a period of time with an injury. Barham went down for a period of time with an injury, right? So the linebacker core got banged up in this game, and we just could not stop the run at all. This comes down to that, like Ryan's talked about it on previous week's shows. There's always seems to be that one guy, usually it's a wide receiver that we can't stop. And it's a one guy that beats us long or beats us with the big plays. This time it was in the run game, and Quorum ran all over us.
Yeah, the biggest miss out of that linebacker core was Ruben, in my opinion, because he mostly beat us with speed. He mostly beat us to the outside. Yep. And, we might have players that, rival Ruben in a lot of things in that linebacker core, but speed is not one of them. He is the fastest linebacker that we have that plays on a regular basis. And we missed that greatly in that game because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was, phenomenal, and just getting a chance to cover Blake in high school, getting to know him, his dad. I know he's Michigan player or whatnot, but when you get to know him, just type of person he is, one, you're happy that he has this level of success, and two, you're not surprised. I mean, he's probably one of the best, if not the best, running back in the country right now. I think he's in that conversation, but
100%.
yeah, I mean, he's just kind of that. He was definitely the workhorse for that Michigan offense. I think it was the 13th consecutive game that he rushed for over 100 yards on the ground. And yeah, I mean, Maryland just they couldn't get it. Obviously, that touchdown right before the half, and then was really similar to that last touchdown that Michigan scored to kind of seal the game for them. Yeah, I mean, once he gets in the open field, like you said, Ryan, the guy like Ruben and his speed, you kind of need someone to be able to replace that. Maryland just didn't really have that, and I thought that was kind of the difference. I thought the defensive line played well, but obviously, just it takes a village to contain a guy like Corum.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't, the one thing that jumped out to me, again, being so close to the field, was the size difference in the trenches. Both sides, Michigan's offensive line and their defensive line, looked to be considerably larger than our guys as well. And that hasn't been the case much this year. I mean, I think Buffalo was probably, up until this game, was one of the biggest teams in the trenches that we had seen so far. But it obviously made an impact because they were able to open holes, and Blake, like I said, ran all over.
Yeah, well, welcome to Big Ten. I don't think it's going to be the last big defensive offensive line that's going to be bigger than our guys. I mean, at least we don't look out of place anymore. Like, our offensive line looks like it belongs in the Big Ten. But yeah, clearly going to be bigger than the Buffaloes and the Charlottes of the world that we've already played, or the SMUs even. But I think that the biggest thing with that offensive line is that we are building the depth all the way through. It is the one place that I haven't really seen the downside of Locks playing these number 2 and number 3 guys now, because now on the defensive side, we've seen some leaks. We've seen some guys get beat, things like that. But that offensive line, I almost don't notice in like live game action when the players switch. I'll just notice like 3 plays later, like, oh wait, that's Colton.
I do.
Now.
I was gonna say I can see it in the snaps. The snaps are much higher when Colton Deary's not out there. That's the only difference that I notice with that offensive line. But you're right; they've got a good rotation of guys. Again, a lot of young, big guys behind the starting offensive line that give us a lot of hope for the future. But I mean, again, the offensive line, I think, did their job in this game. I think Roman Hemby had a decent game. He just didn't have a chance to take those big chunks. And that's one of the things that we've seen a lot from with Hemby this year, is his ability to get to the next level. And he just couldn't get beyond that defensive front for anything more than like a 5-6 yard gain.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like the rushing attack, none of those guys really got a chance to like really set in and kind of get into a groove. And I also noticed, a lot of people were saying it during the game, like why we stopped running the ball, and then fourth quarter, I think we came out and we started running the ball. But we think we only had 4 rushes in the second quarter, 5 in the third quarter. And I felt like, especially a guy like Roman, I thought Antwain Littleton, I thought he did a really good job. 5th straight game with at least 1 touchdown. So again, had tip to him, but just the ability to create that balance offense, I thought was kind of lost at times. And get a guy like Hemby in speed or in space and use his speed, I thought that kind of could have maybe been a jump start for that offense. But yeah, like you said, Fred, didn't get a chance to see too much of it.
Going away from Littleton was the biggest thing, in my opinion. I mean, the fans around us in the stadium were like terrified when Littleton started running, when they started bouncing off linebackers like they didn't exist. They just all started asking questions like, oh, is this your running number one running back? Is this whatever all these things? It was like, what? How big is he? What's all these things? It was definitely a difference. You can still physically see, even 50 yards off the field, that this guy is just different. And so use him, change his pace. I think he needs 5 or 6 more carries a game than he's getting. You need to see what happens. You need to bruise up some linebackers with him.
I mean, I agree. I'd like to see him get a little bit more touches, but up until this game, I mean, Hemby's been having his way on the ground. He's getting over 100 yards every single game at ease.
But
and
some of them were on
over
4 touches.
Yeah, but I don't know. I agree. I think they should run the ball more, and I think they could be a more
overall.
Yeah.
I think they could be a more balanced offense, and I think that's going to be a part of this team's success moving forward. Is the more balanced they can become as an offense, because they don't, as talented as they are in the passing game, they don't have to be just a pass heavy team. We didn't know what this running back core was actually going to look like in game action. Well, now we know, and we know these guys can all be effective if given the right opportunity. So I think, in my opinion, that is the next level of success with this team, or taking this offense to the next level, is being a little bit more balanced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
30 carries, 20 and 10. Let's go.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead. The one question I do have for you guys, because we've talked in the past with like Mike Locksley and his leash, and how long or how short is a leash. And you kind of glazed over it early on in the pod, Ahmed. Ty Felton, obviously opening with the kickoff fumble, which ended up giving Michigan 7 points within the first 10 seconds of the game, right? And we lost by 7 points. So you could say that that's just as much of a factor in the game as anything else. How short is the leash on Ty Felton at this point? Because this is now 2 weeks in a row that he's had a fumble issue on kickoffs. And we've got a ton of talent behind him. I mean, there's a bunch of freshman wide receivers that are getting a bunch of run that look like they're going to lose their red shirt. So why are we not using guys like that? I'm on both sides of it, because I was kind of happy to see Locke still show faith in him to keep him out there, and he was able to catch the ball. I mean, he even made a point of emphasis to cross his hands across his chest when he was holding the ball, even when he was running off the field after the play was over. But again, when you're trying to win as many as your games as you possibly can, ball security is super important.
Yeah. Loxley actually mentioned exactly that today. He said ball security is important when he was asked about conditions, and said, they prepped for that yesterday, during Wednesday's practice, excuse me. Yeah, I think the leash, I wouldn't be surprised if Maryland sees some different faces at kick returner this weekend. Because I think Loxley hasn't really been tied to one specific person. I mean, I think we've seen Keontae Banks and Roman Hemby at times. So I think you can definitely kind of see a switch, but yeah, I mean, that was clearly the first thing that kind of came out of his mouth after that Michigan game was, just the type of lack of execution that we need to avoid and things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we do see some different faces, because like you guys said, I think even in the offseason when you're previewing the special teams, there's a lot of guys that kind of fit that mold, like Raheem Jarrett mold, where they just the slender to the slim guys that have the top end speed that you get them in space, and that's why we've seen so many guys. Jacob Copeland was another guy. Deshaun Jones is another guy that's capable of it. So I think there's multiple candidates, but yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that Ty will be the guy. 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, especially if these types of things continue to persist. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the talk about the offensive line, cutting back on their penalties, and Loxley saying, they do what I coach them to do and whatnot. I think that same mantra kind of extends to the special teams unit.
Octavian Smith also looked really good earlier in the year, returning kicks.
That's where I was going.
Yeah. That's a possibility. I mean, I'm not anti-Ty. This one was bad. The last fumble, I think, was more of like those things that happen in football.
You could almost see it on his face. I told you about this prior. So I was actually over at the tunnel recording video as the guys were coming out on the field, right? And most of the guys had that I'm locked in look in their face and just coming out of the tunnel, ready to go to work. There were a couple of guys that looked a little extra amped up. CJ Dupree was one of them.
Yep.
Ty
Ryland
Felton was one of them. Ty Felton came out of that tunnel with a little bit of a twitch to him, a little extra get up on him. So yeah, it's nodding his head. Like he looked a little extra amped up for that game. And
on TV, it came across as well. You could see him right before the kick, and he's doing all the crosses, and then he's jumping up and down. It's just a little extra.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, you think about it, right?
He was hyped up in the big house.
You're in the big house, about to go in front of 110,000 people on national TV, and you're going to touch the ball first. Like, yeah, there's a little extra energy that comes with that. But again, not trying to build any excuses. You got to be able to field those balls if you're going to be back there, because you can't put your team in that kind of position.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. So, Octavian Smith, that's another name. I'm surprised I didn't mention that, but yeah, good candidate.
I do want to point out again, though, we've mentioned a little bit, but just to put names to these things. There was a lot of other times he did not cost us that game. We cost ourselves that game by dropping two dead to right interceptions. We cost ourselves that game by watching the quarterback fumble the ball twice on the same drive, didn't get either one of those recoveries, and then they score 7 points. We lost that game 100 different ways. So like we took a lead after that. So we can no longer really blame him for the said loss. So don't take it that way. Anyone that's involved out here, I don't know if, Ty's mom's out here listening. This name is not on you. There was a lot of ways we could have won this game. It's just something we had to talk about.
Absolutely. And we'll quickly go over our players of the game from this week. On defense, a guy that was all over the field, a guy that was a really sound tackler, had a couple of tackles for loss in this game. Isaiah Hazel was our defensive player of the game. I think he was second on the team with 5 tackles, somewhere around that, but 2 of the tackles were for loss. Offensive player of the game, which was it was good to see. There wasn't any one person that stood out more than the other, but to see CJ Dupree finally get involved more in the receiving end of the offense, got his first touchdown in the game, had a couple of catches for 40-some yards. It was good to see CJ Dupree involved in the offense.
Yeah, just looked like an active receiver, like way more than we've seen in the past. Even though on the balls he didn't come down with, was not targeted, he was being used as a receiving threat more than we had seen in the past.
Yeah, with that little hurdle, huh?
Yeah.
That hurdle was bad.
There's nothing little about that guy, but yes, a hurdle.
Yeah, get it. And when CJ gets the ball on that outside edge, it's kind of like Antoine Littleton, where you're like, what quarterback or safety is going to take this guy down? Like it's going to take a hurt. Get his ankles right. Like that's
absolutely.
It's so much fun to watch them on the edge. So I hope it continues and builds.
And then the Special Teams Award, which I think at this point, we're just going to have to rename it the Chad Ryland Award, because it's just going to be this way pretty much throughout the entire year. Chad Ryland wins our Special Teams Player of the Week. 2 50 bangers. I think he had 52 and 53. Was that what they were in this game? And perfect with his extra points. This guy is definitely, no question about it, and this isn't just being a homer, best kicker in college football right now.
I do also want to give credit to the other 2 in that system, because now that I got to watch it on TV, you can't tell in the stadium really unless it's a really bad snap. Beautiful snaps, great holds, getting the ball turned perfectly. They're really a well-oiled machine right now. So that little 3-part winner on that special teams, it was something to watch. And again, you can't see that live, so I'll give you guys the credit late now that I've rewatched it.
What a turn from last year. I mean, all we did was harp on special teams and the negativity around it. Now we're talking about one of the best kickers in college football. It's pretty crazy. It's
Kick
a good
return
thing
needs
to
to step up with the rest of them, but
yeah.
He enters the weekend with 23 consecutive made field goals, so it's pretty impressive.
It is for sure. All right, let's turn to focus to Saturday night's matchup versus MSU. Michigan State comes to town 2-2. Obviously, both teams coming off a loss, but those losses looked very, very different. Maryland's 7-point favorites heading into this one. Michigan State was actually a 3.5-point favorite of the start of this season. The over-under on this game now 61. Listen, Michigan State, I don't know what to think of them this year. They haven't looked great. I mean, in the 2 wins that they had, 35-13 win over Western Michigan and a 52-0 win over Akron. Great, but they're a bunch of high schools, essentially, is what that is. But they've come off of back-to-back losses to much tougher competition. 39-28 loss to number 15 Washington, and 34-7 shellacking last week to number 21 Minnesota. What are your guys' initial takes on MSU and this game heading into this weekend?
to me, it's weird. It's like the exact opposite of what I just said about Michigan, about how we had no idea who they were because their wins meant nothing with who they played. We don't know who they are because these losses could be to two top 10 teams. Like Minnesota is the only for real team in the West, it seems. And so they could be an absolute world beater. So who knows what that loss looks like. And like you said, it was a top 15 team in Washington. So we're going to get their best shot. It does worry me also. I'll just get my paranoia out of the way early that Locks has talked about, how close the friendship is with the Michigan State head coach. And I just hope it doesn't stop us from the kill shot, from running this points up, because this is not a team that you want to let hang around in the fourth quarter, because we watched our offensive line fall apart in the fourth quarter of Michigan. They looked great for 3 quarters, and then we were getting beat up. So I do not want him to play nice with his buddy and get caught up on, and there's where my paranoia is, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't know. Mel Tucker was asked this week about his friendship with Loxley, and even Tucker was like, "Yeah, I've never coached with Loxley, but we have very good friends. I consider him a close friend of mine." So it's been both ways, and Loxley said that even last year and the year before about Michigan State. So I think it's kind of always just kind of consistent. I think it's just great deal of respect for each other, and I believe they work pretty closely in the National Coaches Minority Coalition. So I think that's kind of where
I understand the friendship. Just we put on points. We need to put on points.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that will impact it too much. But yeah, I mean, I think Michigan State. I think it'll be and Loxley got he talked about it, alluded to it. Michigan State, they've been battling a lot of these key players have been out. Jaden Reed went down, I believe it was week 2, and he came back last week, and got a couple of players on defense out after having to replace some guys. So I think it's like Loxley's definitely right in the sense of, there's a lot of guys that could be active this weekend. There's a lot of guys that are game time decisions. There's a lot of guys that are returning for the first time. So I think it's kind of tough, but yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is, you get just kind of like that hungry Michigan State team, just losing 2 consecutive games and looking to reclaim respect, nationally and within the Big Ten. But I think on paper, Maryland does match up pretty well with them. And if it rains and there's not too much passing, I think that'll be kind of interesting. And obviously maybe a Roman Hemby kind of day, Antoine Littleton again. But yeah, I think Michigan State, they have some good pieces, but a lot more questions than answers.
Well, let's run down real quick what Michigan State brings to the table, right? So last week, Ibrahim, Minnesota, one of the best backs in college football, ran for over 100 yards against them. They gave up 240 total yards on the ground, so it wasn't just us that was struggling against the run last week. They were struggling against the run as well. Their quarterback, junior Peyton Thorne, 77 of 118, 65%, 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, but 6 interceptions on the year so far. In comparison, Leah's at 1,102 yards, 7 TDs to 4 interceptions. He did throw 2 picks in that game versus Minnesota, did not look very good. He's not much of a mobile guy. He's more of the traditional pocket passing type quarterback. So you won't have to worry about the, like with, was his name McCarthy last week, who was extending plays with his legs.
His legs are going to be a problem for years to come.
Yeah, exactly. That will not be the case with Thorne at quarterback. Running back, it got a trio of guys that touched the ball, averaging collecting just a little over 5 yards per carry. Most of that, again, was against the smaller teams. 2 best combined for only 10 carries at 36 yards versus Minnesota last week. And you mentioned Jaden Reed, wide receiver. They've got a trio of wide receivers. Ryan will like these guys, who all seemingly contributed pretty equally. Keon Coleman, 6'4", 210 pounds.
That's my guy.
That's his guy there. 19 catches, 261 yards, and 3 TDs on the year. Trey Mosley, 6'2", 195 pounds, another bigger body, 12 receptions for 169 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jaden Reed, like you said, he's been a little banged up, already 12 catches and 128 yards on the team. So they do spread the ball around. They do have some options just like we do at the wide receiver position. But on the defensive side of the ball, I think that's where they're challenged the most, just like Maryland is. They're not a very good secondary. That's probably their weakest point. So we will have the ability to be able to attack the middle of the defense and even take some shots down the field in this game. So I think that's kind of, if Ryan, if what you said ends up being a problem where we're in a position where we have so many points that we can take the foot off the gas, I don't think Loxley will. But if that's the case, I think it's a good problem to have, because I don't know if we're going to be up that much in this game. I think that these teams kind of mirror each other in a lot of ways, that this could end up being one of those sloppy, close kind of games that comes down to the fourth quarter and who decides it.
Well, I hope we get 240 yards like Minnesota did. Let's just run the ball.
I hope so. Let's commit
I
to
just
it.
want to. Let's see it. I mean, I don't know why we haven't let these guys run. They're not being stopped by anyone but the number of runs they get. That's who's stopping them.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. You look at Antoine Littleton. He got hit 3 yards in the backfield and still picked up that 3rd and 1 run. He still managed to drag the nose guard to get the first down. You got to let these boys eat. I know Leah's great. I know your wide receivers are great, but they're going to appreciate getting people sucked up into the box. They're going to love those open lanes if you can just get these guys established. And if somebody just gave up 240 yards on the ground and you have two damn good running backs, neither one of them are probably Ibrahim, but I haven't actually watched Ibrahim play since the knee injury. I know he was amazing beforehand, but these are great running backs. Let them eat, and then let Leah have open passing lanes, because I love that he has these guys to distribute the ball to. I don't like him having to find these tiny windows. It's not his strong suit. I like him finding the open man.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess your key to the game then is what we were talking about earlier: staying balanced on offense, trying to run the ball more down their throat versus it being a pass-heavy offense. Because like I said, I mean, right now with this group of running backs and with the way the offensive line is creating holes, there's no reason not to use the running backs more. And
also, we're going to be in the middle of Ian, it looks like. We got rain Friday, Saturday, and Sunday around here, so it is going to be a wet mess. So 2 arms on the rock and go.
Right. Yep. And then I think my biggest concern in this game, and maybe Ahmed, you can help shed some light and maybe calm my nerves a little bit, it's going to be health. Because I think that's right now, it's the biggest determining factor heading into this game. You got Leah and Rack, who both were banged up against Michigan. He's got the leg issue and I think a hip issue that he's dealing with right now, Leah. Rack, obviously, with the concussion, which we saw that in person. I mean, his head bounced off the turf. I mean, pretty hard.
Yeah.
And he looked a little wobbly on the sidelines when he was walking around. Even when he came out of the medical tent and you could see he wanted to get back in the game, he didn't look 100% on the sidelines. So have you heard anything with those two? What's the latest?
So Talia was at practice on Tuesday wearing a brace on his right knee. Loxley's been very coy, but then, Talia said, I feel 100%. I'm expecting Talia to be available this weekend. Rack was he missed the open portion of Tuesday's practice. Then Loxley said he was in the bathroom, so don't look into that. I heard
so you had a Lamar moment.
Yeah, I heard that he did, or sorry, I heard, and then Loxley said to this on Thursday that Raheem Jarrett was able to practice on Wednesday. Everything I've heard is that, kind of through meetings and going through the week that, just kind of letting Rack kind of, get back into the swing of things and get his legs under him a little bit. But the expectation is that he's going to be available this weekend. And then obviously Ruben Hippolyte, who last week I said I don't expect to see him available this weekend. He did end up suiting up, even though Loxley said he's a game time decision for an away game, which is like, he's either traveling or he's not.
Right.
So obviously missing one game, and I expect to see him available. So, I mean, all three of those guys, those are really big guys. I think Ruben, and I think he's a hell of a player. I think, Maryland can kind of mitigate some of that inside linebacker depth, just, really because of Jayshon Barham. But obviously Talia would definitely swing things, and so we'll see. Should be good. How good does Talia look? How healthy does Talia look? Is there any signs of lingering pain or anything like that? I think that's kind of the biggest question. I don't think I really questioned, whether he was going to play, just more so how he looked, and that's kind of been consistent through the week. So we'll see. Will definitely be something to keep close tabs on. But for now, I expect all of them to suit up.
Well, if you have a less than mobile Leah, that's even more reason to just hand the ball off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of the reason that Locks is being so coy is just using this opportunity to drag the other Big Ten coaches. Clearly, he keeps following up his game time decisions with the statement that as all other Big Ten coaches are doing, I am leaving as a game time decision.
Yeah.
But with the concussion thing, if you're practicing, you're playing. So that one's clear. Like, you don't come back to practice until you're cleared from concussion. The Leah thing's a little bit different. We are also going to be out one of our defensive backs right now, right? We had was it Gibson? Was it Gavin Gibson?
No, Glenn Miller.
Glenn Miller.
Miller, right.
Glenn Miller, yeah, that's who it was.
Okay.
So that's another body down.
And then you mentioned Barham, right? He was obviously banged up a little bit in that game. He did come back, and so did Wheatland. Wheatland got banged up. Anything long term with those guys? Or are they going to be good to go?
No, I haven't heard anything with them. So,
Good.
as of now, Gavin Gibson's kind of the main name that I know won't suit up. So we'll see what kind of shakes out between now and Saturday.
All right, and then the next key to the game for me, continued discipline, right? I mean, let's not make the one penalty game an anomaly. For me, the goal should be 6 and under. If we can keep our penalties under 6, I think that's normal. That's what you should expect out of a team. So like I said, I couldn't have been more happy with the turnaround the team showed last week versus Michigan, especially with the self-inflicted stuff. So I want to see that continued. And then, like we've talked about, stopping the big play threat. Can't let one guy beat you. I don't really see that in this matchup. There isn't that one guy that stands out more than the others. I think they've got some decent guys, but not any one game-changing type threat, at least not in what I've seen on tape. So we'll see. I think those are all factors in this game as to how Maryland shakes out. But so far, I like this matchup for the Terps right now. As long as everything is Leah's healthy, he's playing. Rack's healthy, he's playing. I like our chances in this game. So let's talk predictions. We haven't had a chance to talk to this prior to the show. So I think for me, I'm going to keep this a lower scoring game because of the weather factor, because you'll probably see a lot of ground game in this game, which means the clock will continue to run. So I think Maryland will be able to win this game because I think they're the better running team. Obviously, being at home is a factor as well. I'm going to say the Terps win this one 27-19.
I have it at 24-16. And I kind of, I think it's going to be a little bit more low scoring. And I just think the weather is going to play a lot bigger factor into that. Whereas just, I expect to see more of the ground game if we're getting the type of weather that we are. But again, I think that Maryland's a better team kind of matching up against them. I think the biggest thing, and we haven't really talked about him, Jacoby Wideman. I mentioned his name on the site because right now, I mean, he leads Big Ten in both sacks and tackles for loss. And I think Jalen Duncan, I think obviously, everyone looks at him and they say, oh, first round, second round pick next year. He's been kind of up and down a little bit this year. So I think this is going to be a really big test for him, how he kind of all puts it all together and undoubtedly his toughest test yet. But I think Maryland has the firepower to win this. So I'm going with a Terps 4-1 start.
I like it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I do think that with them having that one off the edge presence, maybe we can see a little bit more of the fullback being in there to help with blocking. Maybe we can see Antoine Littleton running at him, whether it's a fake or a chip or whatever he may do into the flat. We're going to need some help. And luckily, unlike what the Michigan defense was last year, where they were coming at you from both ends, it's mostly one dude. So I'm hoping we can isolate that and get that job done. I think, sure, it'll be low scoring for Maryland standards, but I think low scoring for Maryland standards was last week. I think that was one of the better defenses that they're going to play until the absolute monster of Ohio State. So I think that Maryland's going to win it 27-17. And I'm pretty happy with it. I hope it's a running game. I think there's a lot of different ways Maryland can win this, but I just think the safest way with what they got going on, with what they've let up this year, is just to let them eat and get them with their big plays. Like, we don't need 13 passes for 10 yards. You can run the ball 6 times and then hit them for 40. It's worked for us for a couple of years now. So that's just how I see it.
I like it. So we're all in the Terps. We're all at a 4-1 start, which would make me really happy on the year and get us back on the winning path, man. You don't want to, like Locke said, right away, no moral victories. We're on to MSU. We want to make sure that that's what we see. Compartmentalize what it was in Michigan and move on and take care of the matchup in front of you. And I hope the Terps can do that this weekend. I think they can.
I'm now one off my season prediction since I've had us beat Michigan. So we need to pick one up somewhere, guys.
We'll have to talk about that, figure out where you're going to pick up that win.
I think it's the Wisconsin. I'm going to agree with you now.
All right. So one of the things that we hadn't had a chance to talk about when we were up in Michigan was the fact that a guy that we've been high on, and I know is on the recruiting trail, was actually in Michigan for an official visit there. Nicholas Harbor, was in Michigan. Any update on that, man? I mean, that was, I think it was a good showing for both Michigan and Maryland there. Obviously, Michigan coming away with the win, but Maryland showed that they can hang. It was in front of a big crowd, obviously, so that's the benefit to Michigan there. But how do you think that visit went? Have you heard anything about Harbor?
Yeah, I actually got a chance to see him last weekend. I know that he played on Friday night, so he flew up 6 a.m. on Saturday. So he was there all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then left on Monday. And pretty much all the feedback I've heard is that Michigan is, if not the top contender, one of the top contenders. I still think South Carolina, so sorry to say this, guys, I think South Carolina is probably the favorite to get him right now.
Yuck.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I know his mom and dad both went up there, both had really good things to say. I mean, they rolled out the red carpet and got a chance to just kind of show like that, the balance, and obviously the, tip back to, mom's side of the family being here. And I know mom has I don't want to say preference, but definitely a more welcoming feeling to him going to Michigan. So we'll see. I mean, he was never going to make it a commitment right after these officials. So I think the fact that he got South Carolina and Michigan out of the way early on, I think that's a good move if you're a Maryland fan.
Well, I hope he wants something to do, because there's nothing to do in Ann Arbor. We can tell you that. We tried to look to fill our nights, and we went to one crappy comedy club, and then the next thing's on the list, and we talked to like 5 different locals that all had the same 2 crappy things. There's Pinball Pete's if you want to go play some pinball.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called Whirly Ball, where you're basically in bumper cars and using those little plastic scoops to throw a ball back and forth. And that's about it for the whole damn city. So I hope he really wants something to do. Also, the campus is about the size of the McKeldin Mall. That's the entire academic campus. And then they have another giant sports complex that's all campus.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can't see somebody from the DMV being happy there, but they're all over that team. So I don't know if they're like, shuttle them to Detroit every weekend to go to bars, but there ain't nothing to do in Ann Arbor. There's nothing to do.
Yeah, it's two blocks of nightlife there for sure. That's about it.
And it's not nightlife, they're just restaurants.
Yeah.
What I should have done before this weekend was give you guys his number, and then when you guys find like those creepy back alleys, just like take a picture of them, send it to Harbor, and be like, "Wow, man, is this really where you want to go to school? Look at this. There's no one on this road, and it's 10:30. Come on, man." But
I have a video of the ghost town the night before. I'll send it right over.
Right.
It was really cool for a few hours post game. Like, the town is buzzing, everybody's walking around. And one of the other cool things we didn't talk about was that like the roads are jam packed with traffic from the tailgates, but nobody cares. It's kind of like a scene and be seen. Like, look at my cool tailgate rig as I'm sitting here locked in traffic.
Fully embrace the whole day thing that is college football.
Because there's nowhere to go afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, I think just like from the football and the track aspect, I think that's something that he likes. And then obviously the academic prestige, and I think I don't want to, it's not Stanford level, but like just the international acceptance of like University of Michigan and the international recognition. I think that and the alumni base, I think those are all things that family really likes. I know his dad is very keen on the academic side of things, while Nick himself is big on the track. But we'll see. Like I said, he said it a couple times in interviews with me on the site, that LSU official, I believe it's the weekend of October 9th. That one's kind of up in the air right now because he has a game that weekend. I know he ended up skipping. Fun fact, he skipped his high school game to go to South Carolina, and his and Carroll ended up still winning 79-0.
Holy cow.
So that was why he skipped that game. But the LSU official visit, that he has a game that weekend, so that might get switched. Miami's in the picture. And the Maryland visit, I expect it to be the first weekend of December. he said both times, either could be first weekend or second weekend of December. So regardless, it is shaping up that Maryland does get that last visit. So um, we'll see. I don't know that I'm as
Hey, y'all
optimistic.
fill up that NIL bag. It's just like whatever.
79 to
pass the
nothing.
plate.
79 to nothing without him. Maybe if we don't get Harbor, there's a nice consolation prize there at his school.
Just go pluck whoever took his spot.
Oh, I don't know if we want to be plucking from that team, but yeah, I think that there's I mean, I've heard the confidence isn't as high as it was a while back, and I know that he kind of has a lot, but there's just kind of been this weird feeling that I get with him, and especially being that last visit, potentially the last visit, which it's kind of shaping up that way. Never count out Mac Loxley at the end of the season. So we'll see. But he's undoubtedly Maryland's top target right now. If you're listening to this on Friday, Maryland is going to see him today. So they're doing everything they can with him. Mike Miller is kind of leading that charge there now. So we shall see.
I hope so, man. Again, I think a victory there in Michigan would have been freaking great. It would have been the extra cherry on top, but still very good showing for the team in front of him there, even when he was there for the Michigan visit. But SMU, there were a lot of recruits that visited that weekend down at the Shell. What's going on this weekend? Any big names or any visitors coming in?
Yeah, I don't want to publicly say it yet because it's kind of up in the air, but there's a possibility that multiple other committed kids are visiting this weekend from an
Nice.
out-of-state school. So that is something to keep an eye on. We've mentioned Dominic Nichols and Evan Austin from Oakdale, both 2024 kids. Um, Elijah Brown and LJ Booker from Verena, excuse me, name just escapes me. But those guys will be in town. There's going to be a couple of guys from Cali that are on campus, a couple of the local commits. So there's a possibility that there's a couple other guys, and I've kind of been monitoring it for last week or two on guys that could come. Cam Upshaw was a guy that was going to be coming. He was talking about this when he decommitted from South Carolina at the time, that this is kind of the weekend that he wanted to come up, and then obviously the hurricane came, and he's down in Florida, so he's a guy that won't be coming up this weekend, and that's just kind of the circumstances. And then there's a couple out of state guys that are trying to figure out transportation and whatnot. So we'll see. But I do think that this is going to be Maryland's best visitor list to date. So we'll see. Should be a lot of talent. Getting a guy like Dominic Nichols, who Maryland hasn't really been in a great spot with him kind of from the beginning till now in his recruitment. So, maybe get him on campus and just, kind of keep plucking away. He'll be another guy that Maryland goes to see on Friday. So they're definitely trying with him.
That's good. That's exciting. Like to hear all the names that are going to be coming in, man. That's it's big. Hopefully this will be in front of a big win against MSU. And again, hopefully the weather holds up and everybody has a good time while they're there and enjoys their visit. On the road, you said this weekend, there's some guys that I guess Maryland will be checking out, huh?
Yep. And the full breakdown over on the site. But, a couple of the guys I just mentioned, they'll go check out Champ Long. Also be in Tuscarora to check out Fletcher Westfall. So he's another 2024 offensive tackle name to know. I believe it's 4 or 5 coaches that are on the road. So should be good. Like I said, full list, who they're checking out, whatnot, is available on InsideTheBlackandGold.net.
One of the underrated things about these future recruits is that they have gotten a little bit of a look at Billy Edwards, because if everyone's assuming that Talia's gone, that could be a problem for some of these guys. So to see that Billy may not be the second coming yet, but he certainly shows promise. He certainly looks like a find. So to have him in here competing with Champ Long, competing with some of the other guys we brought in this year, next year, it's good to show the cupboard's not bare, as it has been a few times at Maryland.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the stories as much as we did, at least experiencing Michigan. It was very great time. And again, thank you to all the fans down there that made our experience a little extra special. Especially thank you to the lady who covered our tab for the second time. That lady was something else. Pretty awesome. Yeah. But if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to us on all the social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at FredBLBS. You can follow Ryan at TerpsBSpert. You can follow Ahmed at Gafir the Turtle. And obviously, if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed to Inside Black and Gold, which you can find at Inside Black and Gold on Twitter. Ryan, sign us off.
All right, guys, I'm going to be sitting down there for this Michigan State game. Rain or shine, I'm going to be in the middle of this hurricane rolling with my boys. So if you want to come down, splish splash, take a bath with your boy Ryan, this will be nobody in my section. It'll just be me. I'll be there by my lonesome with about 8 padded seats. Come see me. Until next time, guys, here's the wishing. All is well under the shell.